Revolutions Per Minute is a weekly radio show from the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Recorded live at WBAI 99.5 in Brooklyn every Wednesday at 9 p.m. RPM's about doing the work to build a democratic socialist future. Each week, hear the latest news, analysis, and organizing experience from the minds and hearts of activists fighting every day in New York City. Join the movement at socialists.nyc.
You're listening to Revolutions Per Minute live from the new WBAI studios, a socialist radio show and podcast from members of New York City Democratic Socialists of America. The Democratic Socialists of America is the largest socialist organization in the United States with 90,000 members nationwide, and New York City DSA is its biggest chapter. We are run by our 7,000 plus members and organizers who are working together to build democratic socialism in all 5 boroughs. I'm Lisa She, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joining you from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which is occupied Lenape land.
And what's good, New York? This is Jack Devine, he, him pronouns, and yesterday was election day here in New York. Since we're dealing with the New York Board of Elections and the new ranked choice voting system here in the city, many of the results are not yet finalized. And Tiffany Caban won her city race in Queens, while the rest of the DSA endorsed candidates await the final results. Upstate in Buffalo, India Walton won the Democratic primary for mayor, and a number of Rochester DSA endorsed candidates won their elections. Socialism continues to have unprecedented success at the ballot box here in New York, but there's clearly so much work left to be done. But first, the headlines. Some in the real estate industry are concerned about the potential influence of progressives and socialists in the upcoming city council class. The City Council passed a bill requiring racial equity reports in the rezoning process. The law, which goes into effect in 2022, requires some rezoning applications to include reports detailing affordability of proposed projects and, in some cases, 2 years' worth of information on displacement trends and economic security of residents. Public defenders with the Legal Aid Society are arguing that their work with groups like Cure Violence is more effective at preventing gun violence than increased policing. A pilot project in Brownsville that replaced NYPD patrols with community-based violence interrupter groups has had long-lasting success. Officials are now planning to expand the program into other neighborhoods. As it was done every year since 2007, the NYPD once again shot past its overtime budget for the fiscal year, although overall spending was down significantly from previous years due to the pandemic. The city will provide a $100 baby bond to every public school kindergartner starting next year. Queens Community Board 7 voted to expel board member John Cho, citing several acts of misconduct. Cho is a candidate for City Council in District 20, Flushing. Our headlines are brought to you by The Thorn, an incredible weekly newsletter by NYC DSA Electoral Working Group covering local politics and radical activism. Subscribe at thethorn.nyc.
So tonight we'll be talking all about the election that happened right here in New York City yesterday. But before we hear how the election went down here in New York City, we want to take a listen to some of the incredible victory speech given last night by India Walton in Buffalo. India was endorsed by Buffalo DSA and the National DSA and will be the first socialist mayor of a major American city since 1960 if she wins the general election, which is very likely in Buffalo, and she'll be the first female mayor in Buffalo's history. Let's go to that clip of India's very powerful victory speech.
To say I told you so. This is the work of a well-meaning group of rebels and revolutionaries. That had a bold vision for what we want the future of our city to look like. Sometimes I come up with wacky ideas. All the time I know that I can't do anything alone. When I said on the campaign trail, I am most qualified because I am a coalition builder. We set out to not only change Buffalo, but to change the way progressive politics are viewed in upstate New York. This is Buffalo, and it's not lost on me that we have a very entrenched Democratic Party that has no interest in our type of politics. So from the very beginning, last year, when I brought my island of misfit toys together, we were well aware that we were going to have to do things non-traditionally, outside of the system, in the middle of a pandemic. This is organizing. We win!
So as you can hear, the excitement for India last night was very palatable in Buffalo. But also when the local media asked her if she identified as a socialist, this was her very beautiful response, was just as excited for socialism. Here's India.
Oh, absolutely. The entire intent of this campaign is to draw down power and resources to the ground level and to the hands of the people. And when we think about socialism, we're perfectly fine with socialism for the rich. We will bail out Wall Street and banks and give $1 billion in tax incentives to one of the richest people in the world to build an empty Tesla factory in South Buffalo. And when it comes to providing the resources that working families need to thrive, socialism becomes scary at that point. So I'm very proud to be a Democratic socialist. I am proud to have the support of Buffalo DSA and National DSA. I received a call from Congresswoman AOC this evening, and I'm just excited to be a part of this movement that is ushering progressive politics into Buffalo. Being the third poorest mid-sized city in this country, we should be considering how we begin to eradicate concentrated poverty and disadvantage, and democratic socialist leanings are a big step in getting us there.
Go ahead, Lee.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I feel like this is just an exciting moment. It's very much to me like when AOC got elected, where like nobody, probably most people in the country had never heard of India. And now she's like in the New York Times. And, you know, a lot of people think of New York City as such, or they think of the DSA in New York, very New York City centric. So I'm curious, Jack, too, how you're feeling, you know, knowing that now New York or DSA has wins all across New York.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It's like, as you said, her speech, both her victory speech and that quote were very elegant. And she really captured something that is so important about the way that we think about politics and why it's different, and that it's about organization and building working class organization, seeing herself as someone who is part of a broader movement. I think there's a lot of questions about the difficulty of being in the position of mayor as socialist and the sort of contradictions that you face and the challenges, and she's going to have to dealing with very powerful forces, but the fact that she is recognizing that the power that she has, it's not as some individual, but comes through the movement, comes through working class organization. And that the reality is that this is Buffalo is a big city, and it has a long history of industrial struggle. It's been faced with immense dispossession from deindustrialization over the recent years. It's really been hurt. It's a place that is almost where the New York and Midwest meets. So it's incredibly encouraging to see such a strong victory, not just in Buffalo, but in Rochester as well, and to see people really starting to recognize that they need to fight back, and having these candidates recognize that it's not just about them, it's not about just winning office, but about building a movement rooted in organization. Lee, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of people might like say like, oh, DSA is so like liberal in New York City, which is this like elite coastal city. But like we're seeing DSA victories in Pittsburgh. We're seeing DSA, where I'm from. It's like a very, the Rust Belt, people who have been exploited by capitalism, and aren't these, East, quote unquote, East Coast, like liberal cities are electing socialists. So I just think it really shows the power. And as somebody who does a lot of organizing statewide, that, downstate, upstate divide is so often thrown in our face. And I think this is just like a very exciting moment to show that, this isn't just a New York City thing, that socialism is sweeping across New York. And it's really appealing to people who have been, the people who have been hurt most by capitalism. And I think a lot of places that, either Republicans or like liberal Democrats kind of think like, oh, this has been our base, right? Like, Cuomo has been a huge barrier to a lot of the things that, we want to do in this state. And slowly, we are picking off his allies because India is going to replace somebody who was a big Cuomo ally. And just that feeling of like unity across the state as socialist is just so, so exciting for me.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, and it's you highlight the point that we're not liberals. We're talking about building a movement that is including all working people from all across the state, all across the country, no matter where they're living, and we're trying to organize to build a better world where we have democratically shared resources, and that really fights back against these sort of divisions that various fractions of the ruling class are trying to split us apart. And so I just want to remind our listeners that you are tuning in to Revolutions Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM and streaming on your favorite podcast app. We were just discussing the really incredible victory by India Walton and Buffalo DSA, and also these other victories across upstate that show that this is a movement that has legs all over. But there was also major elections here in New York, and DSA was involved in these city council campaigns. So let me just throw it over to Lee.
Yeah, so if you're a regular RPM listener, we've talked to all 6 of the New York City DSA endorsed city council candidates. We've been covering all aspects of their campaign, what they believe in, but also the ground games that have been helping to move them forward, all of the DSA volunteers. So last Wednesday, I was at Dr. Ronald McNair Park for a rally and canvas kickoff for Mike Hollingsworth, being led by climate organizers with New York York City DSA Eco-Socialists, New York Communities for Change, the Sunrise Movement, and Food and Water Action. And they were joined by members of the DSA Albany slate, Assembly Member Marcella Matenas, Emily Gallagher, Zoran Mondami, and Senator Jabari Brisport, who were very, very excited for the candidates. So let's hear what that was like on the ground last Wednesday.
RPN. Who has the best door knock and door pitch of all of you guys?
I got the best door knock, hands down. That's me.
Definitely not me.
Step it up.
What you got?
Step it up.
It's not me.
No comment.
That's like actually similar to mine. Hey, plagiarizing.
No, mine is like... And I also go like... Hi, she's State Senator Jabari Brisport.
And why are you guys, you just got like out of the session, you're probably exhausted. Why are you now spending your time? I see you all the time. You're out constantly knocking for the city candidates. Why is it so important for the DSA slate to be supporting the city slate?
We're building a movement. It isn't about one specific candidate. It's about what we can do when we come together. So we know it's a hard journey, and we also want to be there and make sure that we're supporting them as individuals, but supporting the campaign. And this is something, that we really believe in. If we want to change the world, it's going to take all of us to do it.
I'm going to say it's exhausting to fight against the Albany establishment, but it's really exhilarating and rejuvenating to fight for the movement. And so that's why I'm doing this.
Because the luta continua, the struggle never ends.
We get it done, and that's because we fight the status quo and we stand up for what we believe in, fighting private corporate interests and making sure that the public and constituents come before the big money from the real estate interests, come before the big money in the fossil fuel interests, and come before the big industry and establishment interests.
Right. Amen.
Yeah. Now, we need to keep this legacy going on. Mike Hollingsworth is one piece of this, but a huge one. Right now, here in District 35, I live a few blocks down this way. A lot of issues we've had around housing, a lot of issues. There's a local supermarket that's closed down. There's a lot of issues. 2 power plants hit this district, the Gowanus plant and the Astoria plant, both being proposed here. That's no good. We need real leadership at the city, the state, the national level. It starts locally.
Yes.
Yes. Mike Hollingsworth is the man to get the job done. Time and time again, he's been there. Whether it's coming to our rally, whether it's out there canvassing. Mike is coming back from the canvass right now. He knows the people. He's ready to get the job done.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Gallagher. I represent District 50. We have so many environmental issues in my district, and I know that it takes an organizer mentality to really be able to connect the dots between all the different issues that environmental crisis touches. And Mike has that organizer mentality, and I am proud to endorse him because I know that he's going to deliver at City Hall with the team of DSA electeds to really secure the changes that we need to make. We need to make major changes in this city, and we need to make them fast. And a lot of companies are working to undo the movement that we have, and we cannot let them. We have to stand strong, and that means getting Mike into office.
One of my favorite things about Mike is that every time I look back at old photos and actions, especially housing actions, I see Mike standing there. Because he's been in the fight for years and years and years. He didn't just wake up and decide he wanted to fight for affordable housing, right? Like last year, or just to run for office. He's been in the fight with us for years and years and years. And I also want to say, when you're out there and knocking on the doors, when you get to people that are like, well, I don't know, I'm deciding between Mike and another candidate, I don't know what's the difference. There is clear daylight between Mike and the other candidates, because there is only one candidate in this race who the racist billionaires are trying to stop. Yeah. One candidate that Ron Lauder and Stephen Ross are spending tens of thousands of dollars to stop, and that's Michael Hollingsworth. So you tell them that. There's only one candidate that poses a threat to the establishment, and that's Mike Hollingsworth. Hell yeah! Let's go.
35, we need Mike to win the New York climate fight. 35, we need Mike to win the New York climate fight.
We are here for Michael Hollingsworth, and we are here for this movement. I want to say 2 things before I pass it off. If you think about who's fighting for a Green New Deal, at the national level, at the state level, those are the people and the organizations that have told you that Michael Hollingsworth is the choice for this district. I'm talking about Senator Bernie Sanders. I'm talking about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Political Action Committee. I'm talking about the Sunrise Movement. I'm talking about Food and Water Action. I'm talking about these people right here. And I'm talking about New York City Democratic Socialists of America. That's who's been bringing the Green New Deal, and that's what Mike's going to be fighting for. So we know what's at stake. We know who the climate choice is. We know who the climate candidate is. Now it's up to us to knock these doors. But I can tell you that elections are won and lost in the last week. I won by just 424 votes, and the only reason we won those votes was because we were out there every single day that we had left. Every single hour. So you might think, oh, I've already done 20 shifts. I've already done 15 canvases. Do I need to do another? Yes! Yes! That is what we need to do, because this race could come down to the margins, and it's the margins that Mike is fighting for. So let's bring this home. Who's ready for Mike Hollingsworth?
Mike's with the movement. Let's go, let's go, let's do it. Mike's with the movement. Let's go, let's go, let's do it. Mike's with the movement. Let's go, let's go, let's do it.
So I want to talk to you, Jack, about some of these racist billionaires that Jabari mentioned. But before I do, I want to put you on the spot. Whose door knock did you like better, Jabari or Zoran's? And also, I want to preference they were knocking on like a statue in the middle of the park. It was not wood, but whose door knock were you feeling?
I mean, that's a very tough question, but since I got a lot of love for both Zoran and Jabari, but I'm gonna just, because of the longer connection I have with Jabari, I'm gonna throw it over to Jabari. So maybe that's a cop-out answer. What about yourself?
I mean, I would say the good thing is none of them sound like cops. They don't have that cop knock, and that's what's really important. They don't sound like cops knocking on your door. So Jabari, my state senator, I don't know if he's your state senator or not, mentioned these racist billionaires who flooded all of this money into the race. Mike Hollingsworth was one of the people they really targeted. Can you talk a little bit about who Stephen Ross is? Who are these real estate donors, and why do you think the DSA slate for the city was such a threat for them? Well, I mean, to give the most basic answer, these are the people that own this city and in many ways own this country. Stephen Ross is owner of the Miami Dolphins. He has immense wealth and power. He's someone who throws it around, throws it around to the college I went to, Michigan, where he plasters his name all over everything. This guy wants power, and he has it. And so they see these candidates. There's a reason why you have Michael Hollingsworth getting this sort of, these smears, these ridiculous attack ads, and it's not happening to Crystal Hudson, because Crystal Hudson is not somebody who's going to stand in the way of the development like Hudson Yards, but Mike Hollingsworth will, because he's someone who's been a tenant organizer. He's fought in this community for a very, very long time. He's someone who got involved in the movement because he was having an issue with his landlord. And he said, I need to fight for this problem. So he organized his building, and then he got involved with the Crown Heights Tenants Union. So he's in further organization. Then he saw DSA doing the work around here. So for him, he's seen organization on the ground. And Mike Hollingsworth is representative of what this slate is all about. So he's someone who's fighting back against these extremely powerful people who have immense resources that they by politicians, but it's more than that. They use these resources as a threat. So even when a politician is saying, oh, I'm going to fight against these people, if they lack organization, if they're not tied to a real movement, tied to workers who are capable of going on strike, tied to tenants who are capable of going on strike, nothing is really going to happen. So it's so crucial to be tied to organization, and that's why Mike Hollingsworth and the rest of the DSA for the city slate is a threat to people like Stephen Ross, because this race is really tight. We don't know. It's Crystal Hudson is leading in the the original
first vote tallies. It's within 5%. There's a lot that can happen with ranked choice. I'm very curious to see how this goes. I'm going to have my eyes on this over the next few weeks because I think this is a very big race. It's kind of emblematic of certain divides that are happening perhaps within the Democratic Party electorate. It's very in between maybe progressives and socialists, and the sort of differential between you can say the right words, but you need power. And if you're tied to people who are not challenging power or not rooted in organization, then what's going to happen? So, I got my eyes on this. I got my eyes on these other races. But honestly, the key thing is no matter what these results is to continue fighting and building organization in our neighborhoods and in our workplaces. And it's incredible to see people out there fighting for a world like that after kind of decades where working class organization has been on the back foot. But I just also want to kind of open up the phone lines. We're almost halfway through the show. So if you want to call in, we'd love to hear from you. Be thinking about the election results, maybe talk about what your concerns are, who you voted for. And, if you disagree with us, that's totally all right. We love to hear from you, and we're open for debate. So please give us a call at 212-209-2877. Again, that's 212-209-2877. So Lee, I'm we're gonna turn to you, and feel free to add to anything that I said because I'm sure you got some great thoughts on that. But I want to turn to your expertise. And so, despite all these great organizing efforts around with the eco-socialists, around kind of the public power legislation, there was a lack of action in Albany. Once again, many of these Democrats, they talk a big game, but they actually, when push comes to shove, they're not challenging capital. So, why do we need these strong city council candidates to fight back against inaction in Albany?
Yeah, I think Jabari summed it up really well, that it was very hard for the DSA slate in Albany this year. There was a lot of really great climate legislation, and, as we're seeing in the beginning of the summer, we're seeing the climate crisis this summer, right? There's incredible heat out west. We're seeing droughts. And there was some really great bills in Albany, and literally the Democrats who are in power, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Carl Heastie, just didn't do anything. So not only did they not pass the public power bills, which the New York City DSA eco-socialists fought very hard for. There were other bills that were no-brainers, right, where they were trying to ban new fracked gas power plants that are for Bitcoin mining. It's we're seeing the world burn, and literally they're using fossil fuels to generate invisible money for people like Andrew Yang, and so I think there was so much frustration about what the potential could have been in Albany this year. And, the DSA slate was really pushing the margins, not just on climate, but things like the New York Health Act, right? We just came out of a pandemic. We're seeing the climate crisis. We're seeing a housing crisis. And the people in power chose to do nothing, even though they had a supermajority. As the kind of financial capital of the world, as a place that's producing an insane amount of emissions based on the amount of people that live here and the way our city has been built, it is so, so important that not only on a state level, but on a city level, we really attack climate change, because we are so vulnerable to climate change, yet New York City could have such a huge impact in the climate fight. Hopefully we'll have a lot of, great climate activists getting elected in this election, because we are running out of time. We have a very little amount of time, as Emily said, and a lot of work to do.
Sorry, we always have to work through these things when we're remote, but no, Lee, those are really, really sharp points. And just kind of maybe just to throw another question at you, because I think so much of the great work that's been going on with this sort of Green New Deal organizing has been about, putting it together with the PRO Act and thinking about workers and how we need to be building a broad-based coalition, and understanding that we can't just say, we're going to do retrainings. No, this has to be a worker-centered transformation, and that workers have to be taking the lead on this. And something that was so great is we were talking about Mike Hollingsworth's campaign. He was endorsed by local construction workers around here. So how can we keep pushing forward with these sort of campaigns where we're building these people together, and thinking about how we put workers at the center of this transformation. Sorry to just throw this at you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting too, because, right, like you have, the United Mine Workers were in New York City this week. And, we hear people like on Fox News always talking about how the Green New Deal is going to hurt jobs and like these fossil fuel jobs are so great. Yet they have not covered at all, these workers who are just, in Alabama fighting for basic rights. So what we really recognize is that the people who are pushing the fossil fuel industry, right, they're not fighting for fossil fuel workers. They are fighting for fossil fuel profits. And so I think, it's not easy. And I've seen the Public Power Coalition across the state, spend so much time trying to reach out to unions and things like that. And it's not the easiest sell, right? Because unions have been sold out by Democrats too, in the past decade. And so I think it's just going to really show that like we need a commitment to workers and that we're going to keep showing up. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of unions that might have not even like addressed the public power bills until they realized how many local DSA chapters and national DSA was fighting for the PRO Act. And so, we're organizing against decades of capitalism, right? And it's not always easy to build these relationships, but I think we just need to keep showing up as socialists and, recognizing too that like a lot of these fossil fuel industry jobs are poisoning workers and they don't even know they're being poisoned. So we just have to keep showing up and keep letting them know that there is a better option and that we are not going to forget them. And that includes on a city level where there are a lot of workers who, are currently building pipelines, right, in our neighborhoods. And we need to be there not only to protect our neighborhoods, but to show those people that, we are there with them and we are fighting for all of us. I think it's about that inclusivity and just keeping, talking to people and knocking doors and having conversations, just as people did this entire election.
Yeah, that's such a really, really great point that we need to be working alongside. Like we can't. There's this rhetoric that like blames people who are just trying to survive and get by, pay their rent. People who are doing really hard work, and it is hard work, and like obviously you can form an identity around that, and to be like, oh, it's the mine workers or it's the fossil fuel workers. No, it's not. It's capital, and it's both sides in the state who are not actually doing things to make this transformation. We have one phone call, so let's take that right now. You are live on WBAI, Revolution Per Minute. What is your name and what is your question and or comment?
Max. Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, Max.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello? Yes. Hello?
Hello. You are on.
Okay. So that's all well and good that you got somebody elected, and you're talking about this show is called Revolutions. I'm in the DSA. I'm in New York. I've been a worker communist for 45 years since I was a teenager, and I've been oppressed and exploited and all that stuff. And what's bothering me is that you have the word revolution on your show, but when you actually go to a Zoom meeting these days and you talk about revolution, you get removed from the meeting. There is so much hypocrisy and reformism in your organization, and yet you talk about socialism. You barely ever talk about revolution. And I think we need to really get in touch with the reality of what revolution means and look at the Russian Revolution and Trotskyism and get away from the damn Stalinists. It's mind-boggling how oppressive your meetings are when a real worker revolutionary speaks out and is silenced and removed every single time under false pretenses and angry because you're an obstacle to real socialism and class struggle. It's an organization that's controlled by Democratic Party leftists and upper middle class people, and you have barely any real connection to the working class, and electoral politics and statism is not what we need. What we need is a red army. Well,
I mean, we thank you for your comment. I just think it's we can't just shout revolution in the air and people are going to go do it. Unfortunately, people have been doing that for a long time. There's a lot of great Trotskyist intellectuals out there who said these things, and every time they've made these claims, it doesn't just materialize. So people are out there organizing. So I think to kind of just be dismissive is a bit unfortunate. And if you want to go that route, go after it, because the idea that this organization is full of reformists, while at the same time many of the most powerful forces in this city, in this country, are demeaning us and targeting our candidates or organization, is to me absolutely ludicrous. But I appreciate the call, and just in contrary to what you were saying, we did not shut you off or not allow you to speak your mind. Anyone is welcome at a meeting or on the radio show to voice their opinion. And so I just want to remind our listeners that you are tuning in to Revolutions Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM and streaming on your favorite podcast app. Today we are talking about the various elections that occurred across New York. Yesterday, we're still waiting many of the final results, whether that's for mayor, where Eric Adams is in the lead, but we still have to see what happens with second and third votes, many of these city council races, or upstate, where we know there was victories for India Walton and many city council candidates in Rochester. But before we move on to the rest of the show, something that is really crucial and kind of really core of what we are talking about here is the building working class organization, and media is part of that. If you're tuning in to corporate media or something that's like has Bill Gates funds from NPR and kind of shifts the way they discuss things, you're not going to get the full picture. You're not going to hear the full perspective. You're not going to hear from as many like working class people, organizers, people who are out there in the fight. And so this is what this station is for. So if you want to become a member, we have upcoming elections. This is a democratically run organization, crucially. So if you want to become a WBA member before that, June 30th, it's really, really key, because then you can vote. There's going to be a lot of people running. You can see what their platform is. You can either call 212-209-2950. That's 212-209-2950. Or go to WBAI.org and become a buddy. If you have to give $25 if you want to be eligible by June 30th. So you can also just donate on WBAI.org. That's the flat fee. And then after that, if you want to be a recurring member, become part of this institution. So we're going to continue our show, and we've been discussing Election Day, and we've gotten some sound from beforehand, but we also were out there. We were hearing direct from the candidates in their campaign offices at the post-election celebration. Even though a victory is not declared, people put in a lot of work. So, because all over the past few months, NYC DSA members and other volunteers have been knocking on doors, talking with voters all over the city to elect the DSA for the city slate. Tiffany Caban, as we announced before, has won her election, while the other results remain up in the air. We'll update our listeners on these results as we get more information over the next few weeks. We're going to have our eyes on a lot of these races. But we just want to highlight how yesterday was a massive effort by socialist organizers, and let's hear directly from the candidates and their staff on Election Day.
So we're out here at Michael Hollingsworth's campaign office, and we're with the man himself. And we're just, Michael, we just wanted to know, like how are you feeling on Election Day, and what sort of things you've been talking to voters about out on the street?
Yeah, so I actually feel good. The response has been positive so far. Our message, and we knew this after, the past 6 months of door knocking and talking to people, like we knew the message is resonating with folks. And, today there's just been like a lot of affirmation. Like people have been like, I'm on my way to vote for you. I just voted for you. Some people don't recognize me, so they'll see the sign and they'll be like, and they'll say things like, I just voted for that guy, and I'm like, that's me, and they get like really excited. Yeah, it feels good. I feel good. Yeah, I just do. I just not overconfident, but I feel very good that that the work we've done for the past 9 months is going to pay off today. And yeah, and kudos to like the team. We put together like an awesome team. I can't underestimate that, the sort of core team, and then like everyone who just volunteered, phone making, door knocking, text banking, like it's all coming together. Canvassing as well. Yeah, I don't know. So I just feel good. I'd rather be us than anyone else in this race. I wouldn't trade places. I just feel good. I feel good about it.
It was June 2020, late June, and I couldn't even remember the date, but I looked it up, and we started the Brandon Flack on July 6th. So I know it was June. And I was like, you were occupying City Hall, like, Brandon, tell me what that was like. What happened? And he talked to me, and I'm like, you're still running? And he's like, yes. And I was like, this is the next fight. This is the fight that we have to be in. And I just, like, we started it, we were building infrastructure, and it was hard, and it was like, is DSA going to happen? Is DSA not going to happen? I don't know. And then DSA happened, and you all came, and it was like, I'm sorry to be lame, but it was like, it wasn't like not me, us, but it was like not me, all. It propelled everything. And then it was November, and I remember a young volunteer saying, I've never met a DSA member in real life before. I can't wait to. And now the volunteer is a field lead. I just want to say my thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been absolutely incredible, and I'm so appreciative of all of you. And we've won because we're here, and like we're all here, and we've like empowered all these leaders. So thank you so much.
Brandon time. 39 is Brandon time. 39 is Brandon time.
I feel like I said, I think it was the last night moves that like this whole experience feels deeply connected with like everything my life has been, because I was never a person who liked the limelight. A person who like thought I should take up space and knew how to like say things and saw that as my role in the things that I did. But I always had this like deep understanding that there was something incredibly wrong about everything in our society, and that drove me to join things, to like try and figure things out, to like geek out and learn about how the city works and like how society works, and learn about political theory and kind of go into this whole space. But there was always something in me that knew that I needed to find a new place to try and make sense of it and dismantle this inequality that we had. That was just my life, and that was something just really important to me. And that meant going through doors, and a lot of those doors were scary doors for me. Just doing things I hadn't done before, being in spaces I'd never been before. And especially, if any DSA member knows, like, trying to make sense and like, run with an idea, even though it may not be popular, or may not, the folks around you will be, undercutting you or undermining you or questioning what you were doing the whole time. And then the rest of society catches up to you. And then you realize that, like, hey, you weren't crazy, you were, in the right, and you could say what you wanted and do what you wanted and really bring in the folks in doing the work. Yeah. So when it came to this idea of like doing all these things that I have not done and are like really challenging in a good time and challenging for me, it was like, how do we do this right? And that is, again, not centering ourselves, but like centering the movement, leading with ideas and leading with like real systemic ways of addressing inequality that we have and calling a spade, and being able to go out there and say that if our economy is built off exploitation, then we need to find a new way to do the system. And that has been at the crux of what this whole experience has been, because we're trying to build this model and show not just that we can win one thing, and be successful in one place, but we can build the model that the society that we want. So that's organizing, that's doing the hard work, that is talking to that person in front of you and like sticking out that conversation and trying to find a way to bring them towards you and be able to make sense, like, hey, a better world is possible, a better city is possible. So I wanted to double check to make sure I get this right, but so over this campaign we had over 800 volunteers sign up. We had over 3,000 field shifts at 330 events throughout the course of this whole campaign. We wrote over 5,000 postcards. And we made over 70,000 phone calls. And especially, like, we knocked on over 65,000 doors. And I'll say, if you're going to go out in the sun, like in the rain or in the sun and knock those many doors, it's not about any one person. I might be great. I'm totally not that great. Because we believe in a system that we need to fix.
Yes.
It means that we believe in that we got to take on the machine, regardless of whatever shade or color it's in and how it looks. Even if it looks familiar and it looks like what you want, but you know something's not right about it, that means you got to check that too.
Yes.
And that's how we build out the world that we want. And I can't say enough how this whole experience has been incredibly enlightening for me. It has been incredibly challenging and incredibly rewarding. And, you know, in the last job I had, there was this whole phrase, I can't remember exactly what the phrase is, but essentially it's like, you know, regardless of results, you win because you've created the infrastructure for more wins. It's like an echo of that. You create space for more wins in the future because you have all the new leads and you have the new folks who haven't done before or joined an organization they haven't done before or like now know how to like feel comfortable talking at a door about politics you haven't done before. And that all creates more and it creates more access and it brings at the end game, you know, power to real working class folks. Really, that's it. I mean, that is really what this has been about for me, and I know that's what's been about for you. And I loved that I saw Vocal, great office, they endorsed us. Yeah. They're being evicted from their building. Wow. And Pacific Standard, my favorite bar, closed. And I've done Bergen, or down 4th Avenue walking to St. Mark's. I saw the Armory, which is a bar that a friend of mine owns. That's now a food pantry space. Wow. And then walk past the bodega on the corner where a person in the community was shot from someone who had been killed by someone who had unseen and unmitigated mental health illnesses. So just from the end, across the street, a wonderful new complex that's 100% affordable. But that one walk, you know, that's just walking down a normal block in New York City. Yeah. But for me, I saw all these things that was a reference point for the city that we need to build so that we don't have all these things going on around us. To do that, you kind of have to push against the machine. Yeah. To do that, you need to be able to call a spade a spade. And to do that, you need to ruffle some feathers and know actually how to organize around people in front of you and your community. Talk to people you haven't talked to before. Yes. Yeah. That's what we all tried to do with this campaign. Yes. So let's keep doing that. Let's keep managing the campaign the way we want to. Let's do the work that we want to do. Let's keep, you know, and again, you know, thank you so much for everything you've done. This has been a fantastic experience. Let's keep at it and let's build a better city. Yeah.
You're listening to Revolutions Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM. You just heard from Brandon West. We have a few minutes left in the show and maybe time for one or two calls. So if you have any thoughts about the mayor's race or the DSA candidates, please call us at 212-209-2877. Again, that number is 212-209-2877. And so, Jack, while we're waiting for folks to call in, what do you make of these results? And, you know, what Brandon said, that each of these campaigns builds on each other.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really great speech and great comment by Brandon. I thought he had a lot of really insightful things to say there, and just kind of documenting the neighborhood that he's fighting for and the sort of transformations that are happening. And also would love to hear this sort of question from listeners. I mean, it's tough because we don't really know all the results. You know, we know, like, as we've been saying, we know some stuff that happened upstate. We know Tiffany Caban won. We know it's going to be pretty tough for Adolfo Abreu in the Bronx. And I think there's lessons to be learned there about, we really need to be building trust in certain communities. We need to be connected with an organization in certain communities that our organization is lacking. And that's just the truth. And then, but I think in a lot of ways, these results are very, very encouraging. Just the amount of people who are going out and fighting, and we're getting a large number of votes for people who believe in this, and there's also people who are scared of this movement. So I think there's a lot. It's tough. I think there's a range in what these end results could be. Right now, it looks like pretty strongly that we'll have 2 wins. Good chance that we could pull off a third, maybe a fourth, and fifth would be an incredibly encouraging result. But the fact that we've won these races, it's great to see. And I'm curious what you have to say, Lee, but we also do have a call on the line, so whatever you want to go with first.
Let's go to the caller first. Let's do it. Caller, you're live on WBAI.
Thank you for taking my call. I voted yesterday in the primary. I have to admit I'm not much for the this rating 1 through 5 business, but I basically, I put down 1 and let's say a second person on at least a couple of them. But I was also going to say too that I put second for Eric Adams but I'm just don't. I'm sorry. I can't stand this, and I'm hoping we don't get this way because of the talk of the crime. You're running into all these people talking about let's get tough and let's hire more cops. And then to me, it's just this vicious, stupid circle that goes back and forth and more cops. And then we go, more cops so you get what you got with Amadou Diallo or other things. I just feel as though we need to look for something else other than let's bring more police out on the street and hire more cops because crime is going up, that type of thing. We need to do more than just go back and forth. We're like a dog chasing his own tail, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
That's a really great call. So, Lee, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you so much for that opinion. And, I think that one of the exciting things about the way that DSA runs campaigns, right, is not only have been people having conversations about a specific candidate at the door, but we've been having conversations about defunding the police. And, there are a lot of communities right now that are seeing, some spike in violence. While that's definitely been overplayed by the media, I think to benefit certain candidates, there are communities that are seeing violence. And when it comes to actually addressing that, it's all going to be about getting resources to those communities, but also building stronger bonds. And the only way that happens is through the kind of conversations we're having. And it's not like an instant fix, which is so frustrating, and I think you kind of touched on that frustration, caller. We're really in a tough place, and we have so much to build when it comes to, changing the way that we look at police and eventually getting police out of our communities. It's not an instant thing. And, no matter whether, DSA candidates win or lose in a lot of these races, I think we've built some things that are really powerful. So I hope, you continue to have those conversations with your neighbors, because it's exactly right. Calling more police in, highlighting this violence, scaring people about people with mental illness, that's all to benefit people who actually profit off those industries.
Yeah, Lee, that's a really, really great point, because I think, there has been a spike in violence, and to deny that would be wrong, but it's also returning to levels from 10 years ago, which when people talked about 10 years ago, it was it's a miracle that we've gotten down this low. There's still too much violence, but is the solution to that having massive militarized guards all through the city? That's something, if you care about freedom, seems to be restricting things, and if you want an open society, I think you hit the right point. What the Defund NYPD campaign is about reallocating resources. It's about shifting funds into healthcare, education, and housing. If someone is experiencing homelessness, of course they're more likely to do something out of desperation. That's being a person. And so why don't we get to actually addressing the root causes of violence in our society? That's what we need to be doing politically. And we know who, and you're exactly right, know who profits off this almost any more than anyone else is the media. And we talk a lot maybe about cable news on here, but I think one of the worst actors in our society is local news, because they just feed fear and fear and fear, and while never ever talking about what's actually happening to people on a day-to-day basis, that they are experiencing, that they are suffering from exploitation, that wages are stagnant, that there is a need in the society to actually challenge the powers that be, but those powers that be just happen to own those media stations. I believe we are coming to the end of the show, but Lee, if you want to add any final comments, I'd love to hear it.
I just say talk to your neighbors even when the election's over, right? We're facing a climate crisis. We're facing all these crises, and we're going to need to talk to each other to get through that and build the community it's going to take. And it was so exciting to see the DSA candidate, the slate in Albany, just being so enthusiastic for the city slate. And I think that's a very big change from how politics has run. So I'm very excited to see that.
That's it. That's a great final point. You gotta talk to people, because everyone's at a different point, and don't dismiss someone just because they disagree with you one little thing. It all takes work in multiple directions. So I just want to remind our listeners that you've been tuning in to Revolutions Per Minute on listener-sponsored WBAI in New York City, broadcasting at 99.5 FM and streaming on your favorite podcast app. Connect with us after the show. You can email us at revolutionsnyc@gmail.com, or you can find us on our website, revolutionsperminute.simplecast.com, or on Twitter at NYC-RPM. Thank you so much for joining us on RPM, and we will be back next week, and we'll see you out on the streets, organizing your workplace, or I guess at the ballot box this week.
Take care, New York City.